good morning, and welcome to another episode of the Closer's Inner Circle podcast, hosted by your partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffitts, and together with my co host, Ben Gay III, we are diving into the world of sales mastery with the gem from the Closers Part 2. You've heard me say this before. These books, parts 1 and 2, are widely known across the globe as the Sales Bible. So today we are working on episode 7 of Sales Infiltration from the Closers, Part 2, which is where we started this podcast. And then we'll move on eventually to Part 1, but we're still in Part 2. And if you are not familiar with Ben Gay III, and why aren't you? He is renowned as one of the foremost sales trainers and has left an indelible mark on countless careers, including mine, and businesses through his transformative teachings. And in this week's installment of the Closers Inner Circle podcast, we are picking up where we left off last time, and that was in part 6. So if you don't have your book in front of you, Ben will tell you where to find them so you can add them to your entrepreneurial library. And I highly recommend that anybody who is working online, whether it's sales, marketing, podcasting, whatever it is that you're doing, if you don't have an entrepreneurial library in your bedroom, in your office, in your garage, start one today and start with the closers. And by the way, if you have questions for us, we love to hear from our audience and we will answer them on the show. Ben, good morning. It's good to see you. It's Wednesday.
Good morning. I'm happy to be with you as always
Oh,
on Wednesdays. I look forward to it.
thank you.
And we had a little trouble connecting today due to my end of the business. But once again, Gigi saved us, or saved me anyway. She came in, clicked two things, and suddenly there you were. Don't you hate when somebody is showing you something? Of course, you're computer savvy. I'm not. But where you ask for help from somebody and they lean over and go click, 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 there you go. Well, it's fixed. Thank you.
I
But
when
you
I, I've
but
had
you
people
must
do
be
that.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had people do that, especially when I was in college getting my computer science degree, and somebody would lean over me, which I hate anyway. I was heading that way, back off, and we would have so yeah, I get it.
I wasn't headed that way. I'm happy for the answer. I'm just not happy that I still don't know how to fix it because you did it so fast. Oh, it's simple. I said, no, if it were simple, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So Uh, but I always try and keep track of any 12-year-old kid that lives in the neighborhood. About 12 years old, like Einstein was when I was growing up. So I always try and stay on good terms with at least one 12-year-old kid. Bobby, come here. I need help. What is it now, Mr. Gay?
And if you can spot a kid who has an iPhone in his hand, you know he's the kid. You know he is. Just grab him, grab his buddies, grab whatever you have to do.
Yeah.
I know. Well, listen, you said earlier when we were still in the green room that you've got questions that have been submitted to you. Oh,
Yeah.
and where, be sure to tell people where they can go to get these books.
Super. If you want to get the books, and if you're in selling, you need to get the books. If you're in marketing, you need to get the books. And if you're dealing with sales and marketing folks, you probably ought to know what they know. Go to stores, stores dot ebay.com / and this is all one word, Ronzoni Books, RONZONEBOOKS. They offer free shipping in the United States, free shipping, uh, and special pricing. They sell the books for less than I sell them at my website. So that's the smart place to go. And if you order before 2 o'clock any day, they'll go out signed and dated that day, if not the next business day. And they come, no one ever uses it, but it's out of habit, I'll tell you, they come with an unconditional, no questions asked, lifetime money back guarantee. So that's what you do to get up to speed. I was talking to a sales trainer the other day, Denise. He said he was a sales trainer. And I forget why I bothered to respond to him or react to him or whatever. But he said, "Now, what's your name again?" And I said, Ben Gay the third. And he said, do you have any books out?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Let me stop. Did you say you were a sales trainer?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "How long have you been in selling, not counting today?" And he's paused. He said, "Do I sound sort of stupid?" I said, "It's like a new Christian going into a Christian bookstore, billing themselves as a minister, and then looking around saying, 'A Bible? We got a Bible? I didn't know that.'" So if you're in selling, the closers series, but part one, just because it's been out longer, is the best selling, most powerful, most popular sales training book ever written in history, bar none. And the closers part two is graduate school from part one. So I recommend you get at least that. And then there's a closers three. A good friend of mine is working on the closers part four. When is that going to be ready, Denise?
Very, very soon. I'm getting up at 4:30 every morning. I'm writing for hours.
Okay,
I'm having a ball doing it, but very soon.
super. And then part five is already printed and available. And part six by our friends Wes Wyatt and Randy Chaffee is being written. Denise is on podcasting as a sales and marketing tool. And Randy and Wes, part six, is on trade shows, working trade shows. And trade shows is where everything starts. In your home or business, look around. Every piece of every product and so on that was a physical thing first started in a trade show with somebody standing in a booth selling it to somebody who was going to put it out on the market and so on. So, and it's an underlooked thing. If you're the new kid, they send you to the trade show because they don't want to go. That's because they're ignorant. Trade shows are where it all starts. And podcasting takes us into deep into this century. And so you'll learn a lot by either one. But if get on the internet, stores.ebay.com/Ronzoni books and get at least one of the closers books, preferably everything that's currently available. And over time, Denise and I will walk you through
You know, mentioning trade shows, and I hadn't thought about this in a long, long time, but back in the good old days, I was a jeweler by trade before I became a web developer and a podcaster just by happenstance, as that turns out. But I remember going to trade shows in Dallas, you know, Dallas World Trade Center,
it. Yeah.
and just looking at piles and piles and piles of cut stones, uncut stones, findings. You know, those are you're going to put a stone in a ring. That's a finding. It's not a ring yet. It's a finding. It's the gold or the silver or the platinum, whatever. And I was fascinated by it, but who doesn't want to look at a bunch of stones? I mean, you're like, ooh, can I have a pile of those? Can I have a pile of
Yeah.
those? You have to be careful, though. You can really blow your budget in one of those places. But I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but you're absolutely right. Even in the jewelry industry, that's where it starts.
Yep.
And
People
then you
aren't,
got
if you're not,
salespeople coming from those shows, and they're coming into your store if you're a bench jeweler like I was, saying, "Listen, I've got amethyst, I've got diamonds, I've got this, that, and the okay, show me."
that's where it all begins. And I sort
Right.
of grew up in trade shows. My father was a food broker. So we'd go to the National Food Brokers Association and the National Grocery Association and so on. And I was, 8 when I started hanging out in them. And I didn't have any deep thoughts about anything, but I sort of grew up that that's how you did business and also how to work them. My father knew how to work a booth. He wasn't there socializing. He wasn't looking, of course, they didn't have them, but he wasn't looking at his cell phone or his laptop or whatever. He was working the crowd, and we wrote a lot of business. And then I went with Macy's and was going to McCormick Place in Chicago, which used to be the biggest. I assume it still is an enormous building. It's the center of the Kennedy fortune. Um, they own the McCormick place. And so I grew up some more there. And then talking to Randy and Wes one day, I said, you guys are so good at selling. I want you to do a book in the closer series. He says, well, what will we write about? And I said, well, both of you work trade shows. Randy lives in trade shows. And I said, what about that? And I said, oh, yeah. And we sort of looked around. There's hardly anything available. Everything starts in a trade show.
Right.
Somebody selling something to somebody that got it launched and off the ground. And Joe Sugarman, the blue blocker sunglasses, and then it was introduced the English speaking world to the pocket calculator. He didn't invent it, he marketed it. He found it at an electronics trade show. The blue blocker sunglasses, he didn't invent them, he found them at a trade show. And the difference was he brought sales to it. So it's not punishment to go to a trade show. It is a wonderful opportunity if you work it properly. If not, it's just a waste of time, which unfortunately is the way most people handle it. All right.
When you're
You want
going
to tell
in
them how to
there.
reach you?
Yeah, but I was going to say, and you're going into a trade show, you're going to be there all day long. Do not wear stilettos.
Oh, yeah.
Much as I love mine, I can use about an hour. Then I'm digging in my giant bag and pulling out my flip-flops or my flats or whatever I've got because I need to see everything there and I don't want to die by twisting my ankle to look pretty. But yeah, so we're easy to find. I mean, it's easy for to find us. Um, Seriously, it's almost too easy sometimes. The best way to reach me is to call me directly toll free at 888-719-6711. And again, that is 888-719, excuse me, 6711. And leave a message and I will return your call just as soon as possible. And it will be me returning your call. So just get in touch with us, ask us questions, and we're here for you. Okay, so let's talk about sales infiltration. And I have to tell you, you're asking me about the book. I'm writing, and I started to send you a note. What I'm writing right now, and I'm just about done with, is going to be comparable in terms of how big the chapter is to sales infiltration. It's just that important. So
Good.
I'm well on that one and heading towards the closing, the closing gates. I'm almost done.
Well, it's neat to go off into different areas. The trade show business, I knew the way it was. I'm sure it's changed, so I'm looking forward to that. But your upcoming book, The Closers Part 4, I'm really looking forward to because, after a while, if you've read enough human development books and potential and so on, you pretty much got it. Set a goal, break it down. They all say the same thing. But that's important because sometimes one author can get to you and the other one can't, or the time was wrong when you read the first book and so on. But your book, plus or minus what I've learned just working with you on this program, your book is going to be all new ground to me. And I am really looking forward to learning. And so can't wait. Before we get into sales closing power, I promised that Tony Argel, that I would respond to his uh, sort of questions, I guess, but they were requests. He asked for a big lesson that I learned in selling, and that's Bill Dempsey when he taught me TOs, takeovers, turnovers, uh, humiliating way, but it stuck. And then a minister friend of mine who's a salesperson, and what he does with specific objections. And then a questionable story, but it's so weird, I got to tell it to you. Back to Bill Dempsey. We used in learning what a takeover was or a turnover. When I was in Holiday Magic Cosmetics, and I started when I was, I think, 23 or something like that. I said, yeah, 23. I didn't know anything that my father hadn't taught me about the food brokerage business. And if you went far afield from that, I was on thin ice. So The trick at Holiday Magic Cosmetics was to quickly learn the scripts, learn the procedure. They had a system that had worked well, had worked in other multi-level marketing. Now it's called network marketing, so you won't know it's multi-level marketing. Uh, but had worked in several other successful companies that all the founders had been involved in. All you had to do was learn it and do it. We had quality products, they were competitively priced, and the people who came to the meeting were obviously interested, or they wouldn't be there at 8 o'clock at night downtown Atlanta or whatever city they came from or to. So among them was you learn the script to give the presentation from the front of the you first of all you learn the script to invite them to the meeting. Then at the meeting, you or someone who'd learned the meeting script gave I think it was 47-minute word for word presentation. Then they ran a film, which obviously was scripted because it was a film. And at the end of the film, it said, turn to the person who brought you here and ask how you can get started in Holiday Magic Cosmetics. And the lights would come back up. And then you were supposed to whip out your legal pad and by the script, explain the marketing program. And there were, I think, 4 phases to the explanation. Each one had 3 or 4 closes built in. So the theory was you'd ask for the money or ask for their participation about 12 or 16 times before you got to the end. Then, if that didn't work, you raised your hand, and some other person who was more skilled and seasoned in selling in general and already successful in Holiday Magic would come over and help. With this particular group, there were 3 or 4 prospects. I wasn't making the headway I should, so I raised my hand, and lo and behold, Bill Dempsey, one of the greatest salesmen who ever lived. He was the one who brought Zig Ziglar, Jimmy Rucker, and me into Holiday Magic Cosmetics in one meeting in his office. We all joined together. He came over, and he was a nice Southern gentleman from North Carolina. He said, Ben, how may I help you? I said, well, Bill, this is Bill Dempsey, and we're lucky to have him. He's one of the top people. And I introduced him around the table. And he adjusted his cufflinks. He was very dramatic, adjusted his cufflinks and his suit and everything. It was like he was dressing for a football game. He began talking to them about, I don't know how far Ben has gotten with you, so let me just take it from the beginning. And he did what I was supposed to have done. Apparently didn't do it well enough. And he did it so well, I got excited. And I said, yeah, Bill, and tell him about this. And he looked at me slowly. I didn't catch that. And then he went back to working. And a few minutes later, I said, yeah, and tell him about so-and-so. I love that part. And he looked at me slowly again. And again, I didn't catch it. And then he cleared his throat and went back to work. And I jumped in again 4 or 5 minutes later, and Bill stood up, readjusted his cufflinks, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really sorry. We have a system here. When you can't close your prospects, you raise your hand, and a more experienced person comes over to close them for you. That's the reason I'm here. Ben raised his hand. He didn't think he could close you. But now apparently he thinks he can. So I'm going to leave him to it. Have a good evening. And walked away.
Did you cry?
Only because I was too proud to. But that was when I learned when you turn over, do a TO with a sale to someone else because you can't do the job, shut up. Do not say another word unless the closer addresses the question to you. If it's a prospect sitting at the table who asks you, you nod and look at the TO guy, in this case, Bill Dempsey. You don't acknowledge it. You don't say anything. It's sort of like you apparently aren't paying close attention. You should have asked that question of Bill Dempsey, the TO guy. And so you literally say 0 unless the closer asks you the question. And When you answer that question, if at all possible, answer with a yes or no. You know, if he asks you the color of the sky, you might insert blue, but he won't. So it's yes, no, or shut up. And that's how I learned the value of a TO system. It's also how I put it into the training of Holiday Magic Cosmetics. So nobody, and any other company I've worked with, so nobody would have to go through the humiliation of what I went through. And then people say, well, did you close them? I don't recall. The rest of the evening was a blank and a blur. I honestly don't recall. But I do recall word for word what Bill Dempsey said to them before he walked away from the table, leaving me there with a cold sweat. And
Oh,
then Tony Argel, anything about TOs, Denise?
said it. No, but I did write
Okay.
down TO equals shut up.
Yeah.
I got
If,
it. I understood.
if you could have closed them, I wouldn't be here. And then Tony Argel's question, not question, but request went on. He said, what do you do with the delays, the stalls? I want to think it over, da 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 da, da, and so on. And any funny aspects of that? Well, the answer, his real question is you get the closers part two, you go to sales infiltration, starts on page 257, and you read the whole book, but start on page 257 with sales infiltration, because there I teach you how to knock down objections before they're ever stated, as J. Douglas Edwards taught us, and as I wrote in the book I wrote for him, Sales Closing Power. Uh, if you have a built-in objection, bring it up first and brag about it. So if you suspect they're going to say they want to think it over, you bring that up in front and you knock it down to the point they wouldn't dare say they want to think it over. And you do it in generalities, you know. So when I explain our program or sell our products or whatever, so many times people say they want to think it over, they want to check with their brother-in-law who's an attorney in Cleveland and so on. So and I go through, you don't have a brother-in-law, he doesn't live in Cleveland, and you're perfectly capable of making your own decisions. So 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, when I'm going into the official close, they wouldn't dare say, I want to think it over. I never hear that because I bring it up first and kill it. I bring up
I
this
remember
and
you
that.
telling me that you will say to them, fair enough, and they say fair enough, and that's the end of it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it gives you, you can refer back to that all the time. Whoa, whoa, we cleared this up in the beginning. You said it was fair enough. So we're done with that. But it rarely comes up again. Anyway, the one he said, are there funny parts of it or something like that? One is a friend of mine who's a minister turned salesperson. He was a Mormon, so he was used to knocking on doors and being rejected. If you ever got to build a sales force, Mormons are great people. If they got to go out and talk to people and face rejection, Mormons are great at that. They grew up doing it. It was part of their mission. And Jehovah's Witnesses don't don't even think they remembered to knock on the door if the door wasn't slammed in their face.
Oh, you don't open the door. I learned that when I
Yeah,
was first married. Do not open that door. You'll
yeah.
never get rid of them. You can stomp on their feet. You can poke them with a broom. They're not going anywhere.
Well,
And trust me, I have stomped on feet.
they have, I don't doubt that. With your high heels, which is sort of frightening. Uh, but anyway, you find people who are sort of used to rejections and so on. You know, have you found the Lord? You know, the hackles on the back of many people's neck go up, and you're about to get every stall ever done
Yeah,
to
yeah.
mankind. So anyway, this minister friend of mine who is still a minister and is a very successful salesperson the other 6 days of the week said. The one he used to be stumped with, but now he just loves it, is I've got to pray about this. And many of us have different ways of doing it. But if you're a minister sitting there with a white collar on and so when you're praying, they'll say it. What he does, he leans forward, grabs their hand, drops his head, and is just quiet for 15 or 20 seconds. And then he looks back up and he said, he
No.
told me, he told me, yes. What did he tell you? I've heard that story told by other people, but I know the guy who created it and does it on a regular basis.
He told me yes. I had a friend, he's passed now. He would come by my store, and his thing, he was a devout Christian. Nicest man you've ever met, but he couldn't let go of it. And he would start, "Hey Denise, have you found the Lord?" And I would say, "Yeah, he's in the back room. You need him?" And every time he asked me, I would come up with, I said, he was in the car earlier. Let me go check. Just I would never get drawn down that road. And it just became a running joke. But if had anybody else tried it, eh, I probably wouldn't have been quite as forgiving as I was with
Well, I'm a
Donald.
struggling Christian, so I get uncomfortable making fun of God, but there are some funny people out there
Oh, I believe in
representative.
God. I do. I believe in God. Do I
Yeah,
believe in church? Nope.
yeah, I'm not a big church goer anymore,
No.
used to be,
Yeah.
but there are some funny things going on out there. I got to pray about it is one of them. And another friend of mine responds to, "Have you found the Lord?" And he says, "Is he missing?"
I think I did
So
that one time too. So you didn't bring him with you? What the heck?
so
So,
that's how you get around that. They told me to pray about it. A, that's how you get around it, and B, it's a funny story because although I've never used it, I've been cocked and ready to use it, but I've knocked it down up front with my sales infiltration
right,
opening
right.
thing, so I don't hear many objections at all. And then he asked for a funny one, and you as a cat lover may not find this funny. We have 8 or 10 cats that are sort of around and count on us for food. Two of them have moved into the house and sleep on our bed and so on. I'm a cat guy. I was a dog guy for years and years and years. I'm a cat guy. So don't send me hate mail. It's a true story. A friend of mine, I won't totally reveal him, but his first name is Vernon, and he lives in the Atlanta area. He sold, I really don't know if he still does it or not, but he used to do those dinners where they're selling cookware and you invite your friends and you and your wife or you and your husband or whatever come in and fix them a whole meal while explaining tastefully the cookware as you go. This was cooked in this, and this only took 5 minutes in the Dutch oven, and so and so. And over time, you mess up a set of cookware because it stains and so on, and you want a brand new shiny set to show up. So it's not an inexpensive sales process. And then you buy the food for the meal. That's part of the deal. And so he and his wife set up this thing. He says early in their career, he went on to great success with the dinner parties. But he and his wife are early in their career. They're short on money. They had to buy their samples and some inventory, and and for this particular dinner, the food. And so it was not. In fact, he said they even cooked a little more than maybe they would have, and put some on a little bit on each of two plates, and took them out to the car. So they would have something to eat after they fed all these people. And I'm guessing there were 6 or 8 people sitting around the table. In the middle of his presentation explanation, this cat, their cat, kept coming in, and every time he come in, "Oh, hi, baby, it's baby again." They'd pick him up, stroke him, interrupt his sales presentation. And he was getting where he wasn't terribly fond of the cat, but in their treatment of him. Then he goes out the kitchen to get something, forgot something in the dining room, and so doubled back almost instantly, only to hear the hostess say, "We got these two idiots to come in and give their demonstration. You have to, act like you're paying attention." but don't buy anything. Look at this as a free dinner. So that's the deal. And I went, oh, okay.
Oh,
So he goes back to the kitchen, tells his wife, whispers in her ear, basically what he heard. They pack up all the food, pots right off the stove and so on, put it in the trunk of their car without letting the people know. And as they get ready to sneak out the door, that cat comes in and brushes up against him. He's not a cat person. He goes, meow, which reminded him of how bad the cat had been in the sales presentation. So his last act as he left the house was to pick up the cat and put him in the freezer. Now I realize
oh,
the cat, but what makes me smile about it is I'm thinking, the guests all go home. It's time for them to go to bed, and they're going, here, kitty, 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 where he must have gotten out. Here, kitty, kitty. But it turns out they found Kitty Kitty probably in the morning when they went to get the frozen orange juice out of the freezer. Kitty Kitty had been in the freezer all night. I repeat, I'm a cat lover, but
did he survive?
it's a fun. I doubt it. He never saw him
Yeah.
again. How
Oh
many of
my
your
God.
cats would survive a night in the freezer?
Hamilton might, but any of the others
Tell him his
would not.
full name.
He is a hashtag on Facebook. He gets Christmas cards, but he is hashtag Hamilton is an ass.
Yeah,
And one of the
exactly.
very first things he did, when he was about 8 weeks old, I got him at 6 weeks, was crawl into the freezer.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah,
You
I've
must have
got a,
you have a bottom freezer?
I do, well, it's a, bottom drawer.
Yeah.
And he had crawled in there, and fortunately, when I went to shut it, I heard youch. I was like, okay, okay, okay. So I grabbed him and shook him and then hugged him, but he was always in something. And he still
Yeah.
is. He's 20 pounds. He's always in something.
Well, Vernon's cat was probably happy for the first 2 or 3 minutes and then thought, whoa, my paws are getting cold.
Yeah. Oh, poor cat. But I kind of get it. If you're going to cheat people, you might expect some bad things to karma. Karma's a
Yeah,
bitch.
shame they couldn't have put the hostess in the freezer.
Yeah, that's
But,
just dirty pool, but poor cat.
so anyway,
Anyway,
back to sales infiltration. We were talking, I touched on it a little bit about Dick DeFano and with Miro Aluminum. He's the guy that created the phrase, things go better with Coke. And he was and older to me. Looking back, he must have been late 30s, but when you're 23, that's an adult and you're a kid. With Miro Aluminum, I was the assistant housewares buyer put in charge of the cookware division. Macy's had a theory, I guess still does, that if they can teach you how to buy and negotiate, they can drop you in any department because the techniques are same. The product is almost incidental. So I was first assistant buyer in the basement linens department. Somebody had to explain to me what linens meant. I'd never been down in the basement where they were located. And then I have another transfer too. And pretty quickly I was in the housewares department where I was more comfortable, seemed a little more manly, but I still didn't know anything about housewares and cookware in particular, other than watch my mother cook something on the stove. Uh, it was a foreign language to me. So Dick DeFano, to cut the story somewhat shorter, since that opened up he decided to work on the relationship first and cookware second. And again, long story somewhat shorter, he became my buddy. We played golf. I went to his house, met his family. I wasn't yet married, so I didn't have a house to go to. But we became friends and buddies and trusted. I coined the phrase years ago, people buy from people they know, like, trust, and with whom they feel safe. And I had all four of those aspects with Dick DeFano. He was a one man trust machine. Couldn't have been kinder. So we struck a deal that he would help me buy the proper things in the proper quantities and take back anything that he inadvertently oversold. us or that just didn't sell with us for some reason. And he said, so I'll make you look like a hero. And then he said, would you like me to, I know you know them, but would you like me to set you up with Farberware and Revereware and all the others with the same type of arrangement? I said, sure. Uh, I would like that. Don't make me look like an idiot, but and he was too nice to say, don't worry about it. That's been done. But I would love to have that arrangement. So banded together, I was just one of, let's say there were 6 or 7 major reps that called on us with cookware, and I was just one of the team. I signed the orders, but I signed the orders they told me it was okay to sign, and quickly rose to, I was the youngest assistant buyer and then the youngest buyer in Macy's then 100-year history. And I was barely old enough to sign an order. In fact, I became an assistant buyer when I wasn't yet legally enough old enough to sign an order. So it didn't amount to much in money. Macy's was never known for making their buyers and assistant buyers rich, but it made a good addition to my resume and my backstories and so on. And Dick DeFano was the guy that did it, and he did it long before I coined the phrase sales infiltrator. He was a sales infiltrator par excellence. And I was today when I was sort of reading over that chapter again, uh, to refresh my memory about Dick and things he did for me and so on. I was thinking, he was a salesman. He called on us by Miro Aluminum, but I couldn't find an example in my mind where I caught him selling to me. He was my friend when he walked in. We were both in the South and too manly to do it, but it's one of those guys when he walked onto the floor, came up the escalator and walked onto the floor, you wanted to hug him. The cavalry has arrived.
Right,
He's
right.
going to tell me what to do. If he screws up, he's going to buy it back. And so on. Nothing can go wrong with this relationship, and nothing did. And I don't know, I didn't get far enough in the chapter and haven't read it in a while. I don't remember if I touched on this or not, but it was really funny. One day at the Housewares convention, I think it was in Chicago, I wander into a room and there's Dick DeFano at the head of the room, uh, training people like me, and there were buyers and assistant buyers from all the major chains and mom and pop shops sitting there listening to him. And then he begins to talk about this young buyer that he knew and who didn't know anything about the housewares business, never mind the cookware business, and so on, and how he became his friend and saved him. And I'm sitting there thinking, Jesus, I'm this is my career. It's early in it. He's about to tell everybody that's anybody in the housewares business that I'm an idiot, and he saved me. And he then said, he's no longer in this position, so I feel free to talk about it. In fact, you may meet him before the convention's over. And I thought, yeah, like hell you will. You're not meeting me under that thing. And he said, so if you see a guy with a name tag on that says Dick Oliver, that's the man. And I thought, he's done this to everybody. I asked for help. The others may or may not have, but this was the way he dealt with people. Dick Oliver had gone on to bigger and better things, was no longer in the housewares business, and didn't care, and had given Dick DeFano permission to tell the story. But there's another example. There's the unconscious incompetent. You don't know what you're doing, and you don't know that you don't know what you're doing. The conscious incompetent is a step in the right direction. You don't know what you're doing, but at least you know you got a problem. And then there's the conscious competent. You know what you're doing, you know how you're doing it and why you're doing it, and so on. And then there's the unconscious competent. And everybody says, I want to get to that level. No, you don't. You want to be at the conscious competent level so you can improve on it. It's, as I've told you many times, Jimmy Rucker, the greatest salesman I ever personally worked with, was an unconscious competent, unfortunately, for the people he trained, because he didn't know exactly what he did. His idea of training was, well, just watch me and do what I do. So Dick DeFano had become a conscious competent. He traveled all over the United States, primarily in the southeastern United States, being a sales infiltrator to people who didn't know really what they were doing and maybe would have appreciated having him take their hand and guide them through the process. And I guess there would come a time for some people would say, okay, I don't need your help anymore. That never came to me. I went to work for one of the people who called on me, George Friesen, as an independent manufacturer's rep. I went to work for him, but he was one of the gang that was teaching me how to sell cookware and how to buy and sell cookware. So
Well,
become a sales infiltrator, know what it is, and have the ability to repeat it so that you can teach the rest of your team and so that you can make
mhm.
improvements.
And I have a sticky note on page 274, and it's right after you were talking about Dick Desfano. How do you say his last
DePano,
name? Dufano. Anyway, there's a pink sticky note because that means it's important. I need to go back and read it. And basically, it says sales infiltrators control their businesses. They have a lock on it, and they've earned it.
right? Absolutely. The only way a sales infiltrator can lose business, and I think this sounds recently familiar, so we probably talked about it more frequently or more recently than I remember. But the only way a sales infiltrator can lose business is to violate the trust. If you're an average salesperson and you lie to me or whatever, I don't like it and I'll call you on it. And it'll probably cost you business in the future, or I'll jerk you up so hard you'll never do it to me again. If you're a sales infiltrator to whom I've given the order book, I've given my trust. I've told you things I wouldn't tell the average person, and certainly not the average salesperson calling on me. If you violate the trust, you are history. It would be like catching your priest doing something disgusting. You know, we're all human. We all have faults and sins and so on. I got it. But if you're a person of absolute trust and so on, and you screw with me, then we're done. But Dick never did,
Yeah,
which
and
is the secret.
you've always spoken so highly of him. And then I moved over because I'm talking, I'm trying not to talk over you, and I'm listening and I'm writing, but these notes are all over the place. And you're still talking about like attracts like. Like attracts like. It's a law of the universe.
Yep.
And we're still talking about sales infiltrators, but this is what I really, I wanted to kind of get to this before we have to shut it down. And don't forget to constantly polish and hone your sales skills. Being a sales infiltrator does not excuse you from knowing all of the techniques of selling. In fact, it demands that you know them. You cannot confuse being a sales infiltrator with becoming soft and ineffective. Listen, I say this to my team all the time. And, I think I've mentioned this. I'm a web developer by trade. And for the longest kind of time, I was the bottleneck in my company
Hmm.
because I make it a point not to ask anybody on my team to do something that I am either not familiar with or excellent at. And I was basically issuing orders. What I did not understand was that I had brought them onto my team, and I don't hire people. These are contractors. They're highly skilled in their particular area, and they're constantly upskilling in that particular area. And I wasn't paying attention to that. And I was just saying, do this, basically do what you're told, nobody gets hurt. And there came a point when I recognized kind of instinctively that they didn't like me no more. They really did not. Yeah, because I was just being bossy. I wasn't asking what they thought. And I said, I'm going to lose these guys. And fortunately, I didn't. Most of them are still with me, but and this was many, many years ago, but I said, "Okay, let's jump on a call." And I started asking them about their particular, because not I have one person for this, one person for this, another person for this. Can they cross purpose? Yeah, sometimes they can, and I'll say jump in and do it. But for the most part, they're working in one particular area. And I said, I think I'm making you guys mad. And it was silence. And I said, I need to apologize. I have not asked you for your advice. I have not asked you what you think. I have not asked you if you have a better way of doing it instead of doing it my way. Once those tongues loosened, they loosened, and I was chastened, let me tell you.
Yeah.
But we got past it, and I got out of their way. So I had to become a sales infiltrator in my own company without even recognizing it.
I think I told you the first mastermind I'd read about it in Think and Grow Rich because Bill Dempsey, the guy, my TO guy, had given me the day he signed me up. He gave me a record by Earl Nightingale, The Strangest Secret, and he gave me an old beat up copy of Think and Grow Rich. He said, "You're young and inexperienced. This will help you a lot. Listen to this tonight and regularly from now on. Read this 2 or 3 times, and then once a year from now on." He was referring to Think and Grow Rich. And so I was aware of the mastermind concept, but I'd never really formed a mastermind, sat down, and so on. One day after Dr. Hill was retained to be my mentor, again at Holiday Magic Cosmetics, I was whining to him about, or somebody came in and complained about somebody else, then they left. I said, I listened to this all day long. The legal department can't stand the sales department. The sales department doesn't like the production department because they don't get the stuff quick enough, blah, blah, blah. And he said, have they ever been up to the house? And I said, where he stayed when he was in California. I said, well, maybe one or two if we have a social relationship, but no, he said, have them up to the house. Let's start a mastermind group. We'll start with making them friends. So the head of the legal department, the production department, the sales and marketing department, this department, though, so and so, even accounting, I say even accounting because I'm adverse to people adding up numbers and telling me I'm wrong because math is not an opinion. If they say they're right, they usually are. So I had them all up the house on let's say a Friday or Saturday, and Monday when I came into the office, these people have been whining about each other and so on, are standing around in the lobby laughing and patting each other on the back. Some people who I'd never even seen laugh. So we called them together and said, we're going to form, I forget if we used the term or not, but I'll pretend like I think we did. We're going to form a mastermind group. We're going to meet every Monday. There'll be exceptions. I may be out of town. One of you may not be here, in which case we'll tell you what happened. But we're going to meet every Monday, and we're going to meet not as rivals, but as friends. And every Monday there'll be at least one problem that we're all going to contribute to, whether it's in or the solution we're going to contribute to, whether it's in or out of your field of endeavor or not, doesn't make any difference. And they said, great. I said, well, let's have our first one. So we went in. Dr. Hill happened to be in town. He sat over to the side, and I held my first mastermind group meeting. And it was terribly productive. I forget the subject. It was probably some legal problem or some problem. We had an in-house law firm, some problem the law firm was having, perhaps with the others, but whatever it was all hashed out, and everybody left the office laughing and giggling. They were buddies. And from that time on, it was not unlike working with Dick DeFano. I was president of the company, but I didn't have to do much. Go out and give speeches and get people excited. That was really my role. But as far as the company running, it ran just fine. And if I was going to be out of town on a Monday, I knew it ahead of time. So I would tell them, we're meeting next Monday. So-and-so is chairing the meeting. And then we'll go around the table and everybody will have a chance if I missed that many meetings. but it goes forward. And we all learned so much and became much more empathetic, not sympathetic, to other people's problems. We found out why Bill Brogan, the head buyer, the head of production, was a grumpy guy. He was a grumpy guy because he spent 30 years in the service as the chief buyer for whatever. I think he was in the Marines, but I wouldn't swear to that. He was looked and sounded like a Marine. He'd spent 30 years doing that. He had bought billions with a B, billions of dollars in products and services, and he couldn't understand why he was being forced to. We were a big company, but we weren't billions of dollars in stuff going through the production department. He sort of thought it was beneath his dignity, and everybody thought he was a grumpy jerk. He was a funny, great guy, but we had to get him involved in a mastermind group where we shared our problems. And it was interesting how more and more insecurities came out once they found they had a safe space. And one thing you just said I can really relate to. Uh, I've generally been at the beginning of a business, whether I owned it or not, or I started the business and it was mine. So with the National Communications Center, the first toll-free order taking answering service in the world, I emptied the trash cans and anything else it needed doing to keep people on the phone. And I answered phones when there was four of us sitting around a card table. And then I was still answering phones almost as a relief from my regular work when we were taking 86,000 phone calls a day on average, 86,000 calls a day. I still had my little seat over in the corner and my headset with the custom made earphones. So it was hard, not that people were trying to mess with me, but it would be hard to slip some by me because whatever job we were talking about, I've done it. Now, the other thing that was interesting, and it's what triggered my thinking when you were talking, was as the business goes along, things are done better and better and better by the people closest to the ground, the ones who are actually doing the work. So I, from time to time, would go in, let's say, to the call center, put on my headset and say or do something or ask somebody to do something. And somebody I'd never seen before would say, Mr. Gay, we don't do it that way anymore. I said, oh, okay. How do we do it? Well, other people had come in and asked, I guess, why do you do it that way? Oh, I don't know. That's the way we all, that's the way Mr. Gay started it when this was a card table. And they said, well, can I make a suggestion? And slowly but surely the business improved because we created an atmosphere where that was okay. Everything we're doing was not right. At Holiday Magic, the owner of the company had a thing until you've made 300, this is in the early 60s, until you've made $300,000 working my plan, I don't want to hear your views of my plan. And today that would be $3.5 million that you've earned in a year. And it was effective for driving the team forward. But I can't imagine how many great ideas got stifled, including some from me, because I would remember, oh, I made 300,000 yet. I'm not allowed to talk. I have an attitude when somebody new comes in the business, salesperson, shipping department, what have you, that's the time to get up close and personal with them because they're not hardened into the way we've always done it yet. The newest person frequently is the best person to say, excuse me, can I ask a question? We had one in the packing department, the shipping department, not too long ago, where a brand new person who happened to have a logical brain changed something we've been doing for 40 years. Wasn't going to kill us if we kept doing it, but it made it so much easier and less expensive to do it his way. And he'd only been there 2 or 3 days, I think, or he said, excuse me. So I think there are several interviews or meetings you have with your staff, your team members that are crucial. The one where you hire them. That's crucial, and you got to get good at that. And then the yearly reviews or the weekly meetings or the monthly whatever, all of those are crucial. And then the exit review is almost as important as the entry review or discussion, because as they're leaving, they will tell you things that they never told. It's like the drunk husband at the Christmas party. There's always one who comes up, you know, Mr. Gay, you know what my wife thinks of you. And I think, no, but you're going to tell me, I'm sure. But the exit review, if we had it to do over again, or if you're leaving because of something we did wrong or we don't do right for you, what is it? I'm not trying to save you. You're on the way out the door. I accept that. But I don't want to lose another one because of those reasons. And they'll open up with you. If hopefully they opened up with you the whole time they were there. But if they ever had something that's been grinding on them for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that's when you'll get that one. So you did a wise thing by opening up with your staff. They don't need another Mussolini. They need someone who listens, who cares, who is out for their better nature and future, and who still, this is my company and this is the way we're going to run it, but I'm open to suggestions. This is the way we're running it now. 5 minutes from now, we may be running it differently based on your suggestion. And you'll never get criticized or chastised or fired for having an idea. Hello, Denise. We seem to have lost Denise, and we may have lost me also. So I'm going to wrap this session up. I think we're at the end. I'm going to wrap it up, and Denise will edit it, and you'll be able to hear it again soon. Everybody have a wonderful day. Denise, I hope you're okay. Bye.